Now joining us via Skype is our very own correspondent, and she'll be giving us an insight as to the summit that began yesterday. How are you doing, Evelyn?
I'm fine, thank you. It's so good to connect with you, Sandra. I missed you already.
How is Washington today?
It's pretty cold, partly cloudy. I think the weather is just similar to yesterday, but of course we're all keeping warm, so everything is great.
All right, it's very important. Now today is the second day of the 3 day summit. How would you say it has been going so far?
So far, so good. The general coordination of the summit has been fantastic. I think that the US has scored very high points when it comes to organizing this event that, seemingly brings heads of governments from the continent here in Washington, D.C. And, we have politicians, we have multi-stakeholder networking that's going on between public-private partners. So on that front, I think it's been great. One of the few challenges that we've had, of course, is that this summit is being convened in the winter. I'm sure you know that as Africans, we don't have any experience. Some of us don't have any experience with the winter. And so some of the delegates have found the weather rather discomforting. And also, I think another thing that was very obvious was that there was, lack of direction, to the summit ground. The Walter E. Washington Convention Center is such a huge infrastructure and needs, sort of direction to navigate. So a lot of people got lost finding their way to the venue. I did a lot of walking yesterday because roads were blocked off. But generally, I would say that, to be fair, it's been a fantastic event.
All right. Since all of that has been figured out, you spoke with the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Bureau of African Affairs, Robert Scott, earlier, and he gave you an insight of the whole essence of this summit. Can you help us understand?
Yes. It's very difficult for us to, peg this as, make a summary of what the essence of the summit is. Okay. But, from a strategic standpoint, the summit has really been about announcing the Diaspora Council, which is an initiative of the government of the United States to look at ways in which we can have some sort of structure that will allow the US to ensure that in the years coming, that some of the commitments that have been made here in Washington, D.C. are not just words, but are matched with action.
Okay.
And so just to sort of backtrack, we see that in the past there have been very lofty aspirations and promises made to African governments that never get met. So I think that this particular summit has been very practical. The side events, and I see more and more leaders being mindful of their words and being very careful and very measured in the commitments that they are making to make sure that it's very realistic and not just building skyscrapers in the air.
All right, you made mention of two things. You said matching words with actions and being careful of their words. A new African strategic document released in the summer emphasized Africa's agency and partnership, and statements by Biden's administration said they also made emphasis on U.S. intent to listen and not lecture countries in this particular summit. Do you see that come into play? And also to mention, what are the actions you would actually say are being put in place to compensate for the failed promises in the past?
So day one really was all about welcoming guests from the diaspora and just really settling everyone in. Yesterday, I was in the room with President Muhammadu Buhari, who spoke behind closed doors to partners at the summit. And so some of the questions that you've asked, we would find out the answers to these questions at the end of today, where some of the major deliberations will take place. Okay. In addition, we're going to be in the deal room with President Biden, who would, of course, be tracking all of the commitments that are made. Like I said, they have to be measured and targeted. So at the end of today, we would have a more comprehensive, have more comprehensive insights and analysis of the different types of deals that were made. But generally, I like I said earlier, I really see a situation where everyone is sort of alert and watchful and mindful one of the things that I have seen is diplomacy. We see that one question that most African delegates have been asking is, to what extent has America met its promise, promise in the past to sort of deepen its commitment to Africa? And that is the question that this summit aims to answer, because America will have to say to the world how it plans to act differently and communicate its efforts to sort of restore trust, because there's, what you're referring to is a breakdown in trust between Africa and its African partners. In terms of innovation and business and trade, if that would really answer what you're asking, I would say that malevolent forces like COVID-19, the war in Ukraine, the impacts of climate change has sort of derailed Africa's progress in achieving the development goals. But this summit is happening in the middle of that bleak moment. And so it creates a fresh opportunity for Africa to grow and develop.
Thank you so much,
Speaking
Evelyn.
of
All right, thank you so much for the insight. I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay in Washington.
All right, thank you. I would catch up with you later today. All the best.
Thank you so much.